Only on 5 tonight, we're continuing our look at sex education in Southern Oregon.
Oregon has one of the leading sex education policies in the country, but teen pregnancy rates are above the national average and even higher in Southern Oregon.
Tonight, in part 2 of a special report on teen pregnancy in the Valley, we're looking at what is being taught in schools, what's missing, and the programs in place to support teens who become pregnant.
The pet the sheep.
Kiana Ledesma's journey to parenthood was a little different than most.
Went to school on Monday and had him on Tuesday.
She was a sophomore at Eagle Point High School when she learned she was pregnant with her son Braden.
I was really scared. What does his dog say? Woof.
Determined to finish school, Kiana transferred to North Medford High, where they have a dedicated program to support teen parents.
I feel like it's critical. 2 of the girls had perfect attendance.
Students from all over Jackson County can transfer to North, and dozens do.
A couple years ago it was around 90. Last year it was around 75.
The county's teen pregnancy rate is higher than the state average, but there's been a decline over the last few decades. During that same time frame, the state put in place comprehensive human sexuality education standards. And experts say that works.
Sex education we know is effective kind of through the backward position where we found out that if we do abstinence only sex education, that was the only time in the last 30 years that teen pregnancy rates went up and teen sexually transmitted infection rates went up.
Oregon statute requires students receive a comprehensive health sexuality education by the time they graduate that emphasizes abstinence as the only 100% way to prevent unintended pregnancy or STI transmission, but not to the exclusion of providing information on contraceptives, HIV/AIDS, and other sexually transmitted infections, while including all forms of sexual intercourse that addresses all sexual orientations, gender identities, and gender expression. It also calls for curriculum to be age-appropriate, medically accurate, and not fear or shame-based.
Folks should be getting like a really robust sexuality education.
Lauren Walters is an education specialist at Planned Parenthood. She teaches sex ed in schools across Jackson County.
Covering all aspects of sexuality. So those sorts of curriculum are going to be talking about sexual and gender identity. They're going to be talking about birth control and sexual protection, STI transmission, consent, healthy relationships.
In the classroom she's invited to, she aims to have students walk away with a well-rounded concept of human sexuality. But that's not the case in every district.
At this point, school districts are allowed to choose how much sexuality education is brought into the schools.
We reached out to the state in regards to the standards. The Oregon Department of Education says while lengthy and elaborate, there are still gaps in what's being taught.
It's not an easy subject to implement. I think there's a lot of misinformation around what comprehensive sex ed is. And there's a lot of competition on time in school.
And any and all assessments for the districts are self-monitored and self-reported to the state.
The thing that we don't know, though, is what exactly is being done at every school district in Oregon.
Who teaches the curriculum is also up to each district to decide, whether that be a doctor, an outside sex ed educator, or the school's PE teacher. Some say that alone can really change the subject matter.
The PE teacher isn't necessarily have that training to be able to give that accurate, medically accurate and comprehensive sex ed, so it's uncomfortable. They aren't necessarily giving the students all the information they need. So we are able to fill that gap because we are uniquely qualified. All we do is sex ed.
Even with the gaps, experts say the current guidelines are working as the region continues to see decreases in teen pregnancy, birth rates, and STIs. But that doesn't mean there isn't room for improvement.
I think that one of the areas we're missing is our middle schoolers. You don't have to have a pelvic exam.
Dr. Tamara Medley says while ahead of the game, Oregon can do even more.
We know from statistics that about 11% of our 8th graders are sexually active. We need to be talking about healthy relationships at 6th grade and 7th grade and 8th grade.
Even with all the education in the world, teen pregnancy will still happen. And educators say support is key.
Teens that are pregnant face a whole different number of challenges.
Challenges that young moms like Kiana have faced.
I was like way behind.
But have overcome with help from programs like this one.
What is that right in the camera? I got all caught up in all my credits and I'm on track to graduate.
Kiana is set to graduate next month. Meanwhile, Oregon's sexuality education standards are getting an update next school year. Right now, school districts have a list of subjects they have to cover by the time a student graduates. It's up to the districts when and at what grade levels to give that information to students. Starting next year, schools will have grade-specific guidelines. To learn more about the state changes and local resources for sex ed, visit our website, KOBI5.com.